Cost of living, margin, and credit. Why is it so important for what is coming? Stay tuned and find out. Hello, welcome to the Wealth Transfer. I know for many of you that have been following the Wealth Transfer, we get into varied topics regarding money, global economics, our markets here. But for those that are new and for those that have been watching, the main thing about the Wealth Transfer is it was set up because the wealth of the wicked is going to be transferred into the hands of the innocent. And the most important part of that is if we in the kingdom are prepared to receive that wealth, then we will be here, of course, to fight the fight, which today, we see more and more that the fight for Christianity is paramount. And we'll be there with preserving our own wealth so we can be there for our children's children and those around us. So the wealth transfer does go back, biblically. It is designed for that, but it is also preparing us because in our micro worlds in America, we really do live almost day to day, week to week, month to month. We're not paying attention a lot of times to the bigger picture. We don't really pay attention to our portfolios the way we should. Even in churches and ministries, they don't really pay attention to the finances or the portfolio the way they should. We've relied on mainstream fiat, which fiat is what our paper money is, which basically means fake. The fiat is what we are. And our advisors, our professionals for the most part, they are surrounded by fiat. Fiat in education, fiat in the way they approach it, the stocks and the bonds and in the titleist world. And I understand mutual funds, the 401ks, our IRAs for that matter, right? We have been programmed that we are to go into debt, credit, take out finance, loans, debt, credit, finance. The powers to be in the banking world, all they care about is that interest and that spread. And so we in America really have been programmed to basically look at our wealth as something we put into their system. And remember, Lucifer is God of the world, and the world in the Bible was defined as the systems of being in the finances, the rigged paper currency systems, the music, the movies and such, politics and all that. And so what we want to do is focus on what the biblical aspect of proper money management is, to be shrewd in our business, to be good managers and good stewards as to what God has given us. And so what we're trying to do here at the Wealth Transfer is point out what's taking place globally as well as in our country that we should be aware of, to plan, to properly protect and preserve what God has given us. And we're the ones working, right? You're the one that is working for what you have for retirement. I had a lady the other day say, well, this is all I have. It's my nest egg. I understand. We all are kind of rigged in this way. But if we all along had been properly diversifying ourselves, not all in the systems of the world, the dishonest weight and measures, which is an abomination, the titleist world of stocks or bonds, if we really had been diversified properly, what's that diversification? Personally, to me, that'd probably be a third to a half into tangible assets, and then the others you could play in the fiat world that'd be appropriate. But we have to recognize that we are in a time where the global financial has changed. China has stepped into it, and our paper currency note is having a reckoning of valuation. Cost of living, as you see behind me, is really important because regardless of what Wall Street wants you to think, most Americans, well over half, are struggling. Many people are taken out of their 401ks and IRAs early, and many do not have proper savings. We were never conditioned properly to God's money or to be stable in God's money. But the fact is, if we had been stable in physical, tangible assets like silver all along, we would be infinitely better off. So we want to get into, I know this program today deals with not just the cost of living, but showing where we are today in the financials and in the value of a paper dollar. This is the most important thing. We and you are working for this, and this buys our food, pays our bills, our clothes, looks after our children and grandchildren. This is all we consider as wealth, next to, of course, land and some other tangibles, but we've been too focused on this, and its buying power has never kept up, regardless of what they try to tell you. It never has. And the fact is, if we would have been diversified in tangibles, of course, our buying power would be significantly different. So I want to show you currently what's going on, because I think if you get an idea of what's taking place in the market system, and you see what kind of credit and what kind of finance is going on out there and the explosive expansion we've had over the last 10 years, I think you'll find it pretty important to start praying and considering about being properly diversified out of the paper world and the titleless world, which God clearly says is a dishonest weight and measure, and into some tangibles. It's not going to hurt. And the irony is, most of us in the markets have recovered from the 2008 collapse, where we're now at, let's say your portfolio was $250,000 in 2008, and then it collapsed down to $150,000. You are now probably back at that $250,000 and hopefully even then some, maybe $300,000 by today's standards. But are you really ahead? Even if you're at break even from 2008, are you ahead? Are you in buying power ahead? Unfortunately, no. If we just go back to 9/11 alone, the buying power of the paper currency dollar that we hold isn't buying nearly the same. Gas is the best example, right? From $1 to $3, and food across the board everywhere. So it really comes down to, what is the cost of living? Now they make the argument that we are making better wages. But folks, you and I know the wage increases that they're talking about, they don't even come close to keeping up to the inflation. So why is it the case? It's because our dollar itself isn't really a U.S. dollar anymore. As you can see behind me, it's a Federal Reserve note. And understand that the Federal Reserve isn't the government, it's a private banking, it's oversight by Congress, but they have banking clients and members, and all they care about is an interest spread. And at the end of the day, a note is a slave instrument, meaning we owe somebody. Somebody owns our debt. And you know as well as I do how the Bible says, as a borrower is servant to the lender, and how that works. The point is, our currency itself isn't a real dollar anymore, because a real dollar, when it was grains of silver, was exactly that, exchangeable for silver. Now, obviously, this isn't a 1 ounce coin. This is actually a ½ pound of pure silver. I like it because it's a little bigger and you can see it more. But the point being that our real money, constitutionally, Article 1, Section 8, was always silver. So just keep that in perspective. Because if our paper system is a note, then why are we in so much into the world? Why are we in so much to the bondage of what is not so real, and yet how much is it really returning? So when you look at 10 years, how much it has returned in the markets, and you may think you're up 30, 40%, but your buying power is not. And let's get into some of these details, and I'll show you what's really happening right now in current. But before I do, got to take a quick break, so be right back.
Buying power. What does it mean to you and your family? Have you noticed the prices of everything we buy are rising? Goods and services are becoming more expensive, and the money you work so hard for buys less and less and less. If you saved $250,000 in cash in the 1960s, that cash today would be worth approximately the same, $250,000. Yet does it have the same buying power today? No, not even close. Now take that same $250,000 from the 60s saved in silver instead of cash. Today, it would be worth a staggering $4.25 million. Now that's buying power. Protect and preserve your buying power now by rolling over a portion of your IRA into a silver IRA. Use the power of constitutional money silver to protect your standard of living in retirement and maintain the quality of life you are hoping for. The paper dollar you are saving has tremendous challenges ahead, so don't delay. Call Cornerstone Asset Metals now at 888-747-3309. Don't give away your hard-earned savings any longer. Be diversified. Get protected today.
Welcome back. So now that I got into just a kind of quick brief on that with the wealth transfer and what, really is the currency we're holding. And when we're using this, because this is what we're earning in our paychecks, and then we're allowing it to go into our 401ks, we're allowing it to go into our IRAs, and then we're buying these stocks and these bonds. And in the old days when we were doing stocks and bonds, we actually held titles of certificate of ownership to those companies. But today it's just not the case, folks. There are so many transactions daily, you never own a title. And one day I'll do a whole program on what that really means, but this is not what you think it is anymore. And the fact that we're putting all of what God has blessed us with into a system that is a dishonest weight and measure, it really kind of surprises me, but it is our education. Most people out of college today, they don't even know what a gold standard is. And I'm not advocating we ever go back to a gold standard because we really can't. We have too much debt. Gold would have to be worth $25,000, $50,000 an ounce probably just to balance ourselves out. What I'm trying to get at is we have been focusing ever since this 2008 collapse on the stock market world. A lot of times we sat in cash and then we finally went into the markets and everybody seems to be, at least we're making some money. But are you? Buying power. How is your buying power? If you have the same portfolio value as you did in 2008, today, even if you're up 20, 30, 40%, your buying power isn't the same. We have lost well more than that in buying power. Actually, hundreds of percent in some cases in buying power. Gasoline alone is up 200%. So the point is, what does it buy you? Cost of living. Things are more expensive. Construction, things around the home. Now, what's taken place in the market system today is the retail is flooding in, retail being we the people, flooding into the markets and staying there. We're comfortable. We're relaxed. There's nothing going on that seems scary. We even got the Koreas now talking in peace. I mean, it's just amazing what's taking place globally. But it doesn't stop what is in front of us. It doesn't stop what's taking place in Canada. This next crisis is not really going to probably emanate out of the United States. You just got to look around the world to see how the domino is going to hit. And the point being, it's not about a crisis-oriented idea, protection. What it is having diversification to the point where you can sleep at night. Diversification so you can have peace of mind that you're protecting and preserving with a tangible asset that's real. Because look at the stock market right now today. The reason I get into credit and margin, look at this right here. This is the stock market margin debt. Now, this is in the billions, mind you. We peaked at over $650 billion if you look at the far right there in 2018. March of 2018. We did drop a little bit. Maybe 20, 30 billion came off the peak of this. But folks, if you look from just the left side, that was 2012. We only had about 300 billion in 2012 that are in margin debt, we call it. Now, what is margin debt for those that really aren't familiar? It's folks that have $100,000 in the stock market and their broker talks them into going into margin, meaning you borrow money to buy more stocks. Since 2012, we had literally added $350 billion in credit into the marketplace. And believe me, that credit, when this market goes through correction, is the first one to the gate. And that's where the chaos sets in. Because if you're one-to-one in the markets go down, okay, you just commit to riding it out for 10 years to break even, regardless if your buying power is not the same. But look at how much, better yet, let's do this. Here's a better image. Stock margin debt in billions, same chart, but a little bit different focus. I want you to see the peaks. Notice in 2000, it was a big dot-com bust. And then if you come across the financial crisis of 2008, and we all know that one, right? February of 2009 and bottoms out. Look, it's from the middle point of that mountain all the way to the right. We are going to have 400 plus billion rushing to the gates when this market corrects. That is a staggering number, folks. Staggering. And you notice the peaks. Now, this is a good history since 1997 of where we are financially, and this is risk-taking. These are folks that are going into the market system with credit. Now, mind you, that's credit. When you see the dot-com high, the financial crisis high, and then now where we're at today, it is unprecedented at over $650 billion. Now, I contend we are peaking. Now, it could take who knows when, a month, 2, 6 months, I don't know. But if that peak shows what I think it does, there is $400 billion since the 2008 timeframe that must go to the sell position in the stock market before even you can sell a straight up position. Because believe me, they're going to want to get rid of that because basically you're losing twice as much when the market changes. Now, why is it important to us not to be involved in credit and debt to that extent? We in America have been conditioned. But if you notice here in this image, debt used to maintain the standard of living. This is a rather sad thing, but it shows the erosion of the American dollar. This goes back to 1950 on the left. The green and the red represent the gap between wages and the cost of living. The line itself is consumer credit. So if you notice from 1950 all the way really to 1990, we as consumers and we the people, we had very little credit per se. We weren't in credit cards. But if you notice, when we were not in credit from the 50s to the 90s, we were actually positive in wages versus cost of living, meaning we made more money and the cost of living was lower. So we were profitable as we the people. We were able to have at least a decent life. Think about that. Since the 90s, our wages started decreasing as we started seeing tremendous inflation. Now, what does that mean? Well, we know because when you could buy bread for $1, now it costs you $4, there's something to say about that, right? Look in the middle of this chart from 1990 to today. Isn't that unbelievable? Wages do not even come close to the cost of living. Average Americans are dying on the vine to their hard-earned wealth and what it buys you, what you're able to do in retirement. And for those that are in retirement or getting ready to in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think you can afford retirement and repairs and services like you think if this is continuing? Well, I got to take a quick break, but I tell you what, when we get back, we'll get more into these details, and I would take this break serious. Cornerstone is a dynamic place to get educated, great place to get diversified. So let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Buying power. What does it mean to you and your family? Have you noticed the prices of everything we buy are rising? Goods and services are becoming more expensive, and the money you work so hard for buys less and less and less. If you saved $250,000 in cash in the 1960s, that cash today would be worth approximately the same, $250,000. Yet does it have the same buying power today? No, not even close. Now take that same $250,000 from the 60s saved in silver instead of cash. Today, it would be worth a staggering $4.25 million. Now that's buying power. Protect and preserve your buying power now by rolling over a portion of your IRA into a silver IRA. Use the power of constitutional money silver to protect your standard of living in retirement and maintain the quality of life you are hoping for. The paper dollar you are saving has tremendous challenges ahead, so don't delay. Call Cornerstone Asset Metals now at 888-747-3309. Don't give away your hard-earned savings any longer. Be diversified. Get protected today.
Welcome back. So this is a pretty extraordinary image. If we could, Nick, put this back up one more time. This is debt used to maintain the standard of living. But if you've noticed in the basically around the 80s, 90s, we started going into debt to survive. And look at the staggering number we are at today on the right side. We literally are living in debt. And that the blue line skyrocketing, taking out credit. You see, we become slaves to the system. The bankers, this is all they've ever wanted. Eventually, we get to a point where we're so enslaved with debt, they own us. That's the socialism. That's the communism. That's where you're done. Just look at what China's doing with these people. It's insane. And yet we got socialists in our country that are advocating down that road that government somehow is your God, which is it's just really incredible. But if our standard of living has changed this much, think about since the 90s. If you just would have started diversifying and owning a major port of national constitutional money like silver, you would be substantially better off. But, you know, that right alone is standard of living is something very important for us to see. Why has this been happening? We call it fruits of financialization. I've showed this before. But if you notice basically on this chart from the left side, 1980, the higher the income, the lower the growth rate. Basically, we, the people, even in the lowest income brackets, were growing in wealth to some extent back in the 80s. We at least had a chance. The middle class is what they call it. Were really vibrant at that time. And if you notice the red, that was really the 1 percentile, the bankers, the hedge funders, the ones that the socialists like Sanders goes after, which I totally understand. But what they've done is they've rigged the system that the financials, the bankers, the traders, the brokers, they're the ones making the wealth. Because if you notice the red line, come over now to the top 1%. This is only 2014. Look at how parabolic, straight up, the 1% has made tremendous wealth. And that's all they talk about in the media. They want you to focus on the 1%. Look at the wealth you can make if you get involved. Folks, that's the 1 percentile. You're making 10% here, 15% there, 20% here. But are you? Because your buying power, what this is buying you, isn't the same. And if you notice, we crossed the line where the 1% now is tremendous wealth gap growth, and we, the people on the bottom end of the scale, are increasingly losing our wealth. Now, I contend we, the people on the bottom end of the scale, could have easily outsmarted them by owning tangibles all along because we would have maintained the wealth and stayed out of their system. And it goes into Job 27 where the wicked will pile up silver like dust, but in the end it'll be distributed to the innocent. And I really believe that because in the Bible days, this was always money, and we've now, the wealth have gone to this. Well, if we're smart in the kingdom, and we ditch this and have at least a substantial amount of this, you're going to find a tremendous wealth transfer, and I believe that's what Job's talking about. I really believe because this will be compromised and soon. When it does, Those holding the real deal, constitutional and biblical, will benefit because we can't reverse this trend. It's all about finance and banking. If you look at the top 50 corporations, it's all money. And I wouldn't say money, it's currency. I want to get into one trend line that is explosive to me. This is the history of market bubbles. Now, if we're talking about standard of living, but look at this trend line going all the way back to 1870. And then you see we had, of course, the crash of 1929, and then, of course, the 87 crash, and then the dot-com crash, and then the credit crisis there on the right. But I want you to pay attention to is that channel. That channel is very interesting because it really goes back over 118, some more than that, 140, 50 years, right? We are at the top end of that channel once again right now today. And this is a market bubble. We have added 150 trillion into global debt and 15 trillion in new currencies. I contend what's coming soon enough to where we should be properly protected and preserved, is we're going to start trending back down on that channel, meaning it's a bubble and a correction is coming and coming rapidly. And why does it affect us is because we are in the market system, and many of us are in tremendous credit and margin debt because brokers talk you into it. And what are you doing? Do you think the market's going up, what, 10, 15 more percent? It's already 10% off the high. How high do you think it's going? So you're risking all of your retirement money, as some people say, it's my nest egg. But what do you reasonably think the markets are going to do? Even if they go up 25%. Right now, as we're talking and market money is moving, do you really think it's going up much higher than 10, 20%? I think that's generous. Yet money's flowing into commodities. And as this flow shifts, silver is going to go up 200% back to the high. And it will dwarf anything the stock markets have ever performed on. That's what I really want to get at because our standard of living depends on it. We have to protect and preserve what we have. And if you're in the market system all in, that's not going to happen. You will be surprised because the value of this dollar, this chart is about as specific as it gets. A dollar back in the day, 100 years ago, had buying power. Today, it's worth 4 cents on the dollar. And that's why you notice everything's so expensive. It's important for us to pay attention to this because the bottom line is we don't think it matters. It's incremental inflation. But look at this. I don't want you seeing this image. Silently robbing you of purchasing power since 1913. Just back in 1998, look at what a $20 bill would buy you in groceries. Look at 2005, half the cart. And today, that's 2014, but today, look at what $20 gets you. Nothing. Yet those who held silver still have buying power. So cost of living, standard of living, and buying power is essential, folks. And that the fact that the markets are overloaded should give you a clue. But we're going to get more into cost of living and standard of living next week. But until then, God bless each and every one of you.